I'm mad as hell! I'm not gonna take this anymore!
I'm mad as hell! I'm not gonna take it anymore! I'm mad as hell! I'm not gonna take it anymore!
I'm mad as hell! I'm not gonna take it anymore!
I'm mad as hell! And I'm not gonna take it anymore!
I'm mad as hell! I'm mad as hell! I'm mad as hell! I'm not gonna take this anymore!
He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name.
We are told that the final method of exchange will not be with money, but will be done with an assigned mark that is put upon the right hand or the forehead of a person. Now with modern technology, not only do we see this as a potential, it is happening today.
It's interesting that in our day and age, there is a technology emerging that Hitler or Stalin or any world dictator would dream of, and that is the electronic mechanisms by which one can control all commerce within a nation or perhaps even the whole world by cashless transactions with barcodes, with implantable chips and what have you.
Just recently I took my cat to the vet for a surgical operation, and the vet asked me if I would be interested in having him identified by having a silicon chip implanted in the tissue of his flesh. All of these things that are happening technologically fit into what the scriptures say will take place in the last days, when no man, woman, or child will be able to buy or sell unless they have a particular mark. Is it possible that an identification chip implanted in the tissues of the flesh could be the means that will be used?
People often wonder, are we really in the last days? I mean, what is this talk about, the last days? There are a number of signs that the Bible gives that really identify our generation as the first one that you could say is in the last of the last days. This thing is about to wind up. One of them we find in Revelation 13, where the Bible says a man will arise who will control the world. Now, you've got to have a lot of technology to control the world, and part of what he controls is all banking and commerce. You couldn't have done this in the past. You couldn't have even imagined doing this in the past. And somebody's coming, and he's going to control the world, all banking and all commerce, and we have the technology to do it today, technology that was never even dreamed of in the past.
In the future, some companies envision a self-serve supermarket where every item is scanned as you walk through the store. No waiting, except for,
excuse me, sir,
the occasional hassle of human interaction.
Forgot your receipt.
Leave your purse at home. Soon it may not matter at all, because all of that information could be accessed through a chip so small that it fits inside your body. NBC 10's Dawn Timoney explains.
It's called a Vera chip, no bigger than a few grains of rice. It's implanted in your arm. A scanner accesses a personal code which opens up your information file. Dr. Christopher Mills recently installed the first New York chipware. And because it's so small and inserts under the skin in the arm, it can be done during a quick doctor's...
Different implant for the human body. It's a microchip that can be used for identification and to get medical help. No bigger than a grain of rice, this chip is at the center of a growing battle over its benefits and drawbacks. CBS's Bobby Harley has both sides of the story and the first people to get the chip.
Yeah, we're ready. We've
a procedure that takes only seconds to carry out.
and the chip is now extruded, and we're finished.
Has turned the Jacobs family into medical pioneers. They are the first people to get chipped, implanted with a tiny device called a VeriChip that emits radio frequencies. It's a personal ID that also contains vital medical information. Reddy wears a beeper-like GPS gadget and was also injected with a VeriChip. Implanting both devices would give him and his family more peace of mind.
Unfortunately, Simon Phoenix was not coded. While you were sleeping, everyone in the city was installed code. It was a brilliant idea by Dr. Cocteau that an organically bioengineered microchip be sewn into the skin. Sensors all over the city can zero in on anyone at any time.
I can't even conceive a visual of what you police officers did before it was developed.
We work for a living. This fascist crap makes me want to puke.
What do you think you're scratching, caveman? You really think we'd let you go without control? Your code was implanted the second you...
We need some system for permanently identifying safe people. Most of us are never going to blow anything up, and there's got to be something better than one of these photo IDs. A tattoo somewhere, maybe. The Saudis used an American device to scan the eyes of travelers. I wouldn't mind having something planted permanently in my arm that would identify me.
Jesus said, I'm the way, I'm the truth, I'm the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. He said, if you try to climb up some other way, you won't make it. He says, the same as a thief and a robber. He alone, he said, is the gate. And if you want life, it's in him. And if you go some other route, according to the scriptures, you're still following Satan. You can't pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You can't do it through Buddha. You can't do it through Muhammad. They're both still in their graves. Jesus has risen from the dead, and he's coming back again, and you better be ready.
More than ever before, the human race seems willing to surrender spiritually and emotionally to a charismatic leader who can offer peace and prosperity to a world trembling on the brink of ecological and social collapse, international financial chaos, and a nuclear holocaust. Well-known New Ager Benjamin Krem claims to be the coming world leader's advanced public relations man. In 1982, full-page advertisements around the world announced the coming of Krem's New Age Christ, which gave fresh hope to millions. At this press conference in Los Angeles, he described how this Christ would make himself known.
It is a truism today to say that we are at the dawn of a new age, the age of Aquarius. And it is important to remember that all of the great religions await the coming of a teacher. The Christians await the return of the Christ. The Muslims await the Imam Mahdi. At the same time, the Buddhists await the coming of another Buddha. The Hindus await the return of Krishna, and the Jews, as always, await the coming of the Messiah. I'm speaking today about the return of such a teacher.
Christians are awaiting the return of the resurrected Jesus with the nail prints in his hands and feet. But the followers of the gurus are awaiting a coming world ruler who won't even claim to be Jesus, but the latest reincarnation of the Christ Spirit. And he will have the psychic powers to prove it.
Simultaneously, throughout the world will take place hundreds of thousands of spontaneous healings and cures, which will reinforce, if that were even necessary, the fact that it is the Christ himself. The day of declaration will be the outstanding event of this or any other century. On that day,
He will give you 666. Big deal. The mark of the beast will come out. People will take it on their right hand or on their forehead, and then all of a sudden they'll get grievous sores on their right hand, and they'll say, hey, what's going on? It's not working. There's some kind of reaction to this mark. And then before you know it, according to Revelation 14, everybody that takes the mark of the beast will be damned in fire and brimstone, it says, forever. And the smoke of their torment rises up forever and ever. Big deal. It's a big deal in this sense. The people that take the mark of the beast, the people that are rejecting Jesus right now, are not going to make it into God's kingdom. And we need to reach people and say, hey, the scriptures say, Jesus said, except you repent, you shall all likewise perish. We need to turn to him wholeheartedly. Where are you turning at this time? Who are you following? Not to follow Jesus is to follow Satan, according to the Word of God.
Hey, welcome back. This is Larry with TodayIFeelLike.com. And we are today at the Pentagon. If you can see it right behind me. And the reason why we're here at the Pentagon is because I would like to tell you about what companies and our government are trying to do to our troops. they are trying to implant our troops with microchips. Now, some of you might think I'm crazy for saying that, might just say, oh no, that's just some New World Order conspiracy stuff. But right here, on the front page of the Washington Examiner, company wants the Pentagon to microchip troops. That's right. Check it out. Go to examiner.com. It was in there on Monday, August 21st. There's a company that is trying to lobby to have our troops implanted with microchips so that they can be tracked anytime, any place. They say they will be essentially electronic dog tags. Now you start talking about taking someone's freedom away, because you can not only track them when they're on duty, but you can track them no matter where they go. And who's to say that those microchips will come out that easy? Because there's a possibility that they can move around from one place to another in a person's body. And another concern also is that if we can track them, then other people can track them. So while they're put in for us, our military can then easily be tracked by foreign militaries or foreign powers. So anyways, you shouldn't have microchips in people. You're restricting their freedom. So what I want you to do is contact your senators, contact your representatives, contact your governors. If you have friends or family in the military, make them aware of it so they can bring it up. They can bring it up with their commanding officers and voice their objections. Anyways, this is Larry with TodayIFeelLike.com. Love, peace, and hair grease. Peace.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature, Mr. Beale, and I won't have it. Is that clear? You think you merely stopped a business deal? That is not the case. The Arabs have taken billions of dollars out of this country, and now they must put it back. It is ebb and flow, tidal gravity. It is ecological balance. You are an old man who thinks in terms of nations and peoples. There are no nations. There are no peoples. There are no Russians. There are no Arabs. There are no third worlds. There is no West. There is only one holistic system of systems. One vast and immane, interwoven, interacting, multivariate, multinational dominion of dollars. Petrodollars, electrodollars, multi-dollars, Reichmarks, Rins, rubles, pounds, and shekels. It is the international system of currency which determines the totality of life on this planet. That is the natural order of things today. That is the atomic and subatomic and galactic structure of things today. And you have meddled with the primal forces of nature. And you will atone. Am I getting through to you, Mr. Beale? You get up on your little 21-inch screen and howl about America and democracy. There is no America. There is no democracy. There is only IBM and ITT and AT&T and DuPont, Dow, Union Carbide, and Exxon. Those are the nations of the world today. What do you think the Russians talk about in their councils of state? Karl Marx? They get out their linear programming charts, statistical decision theories, Minimax solutions, and compute the price-cost probabilities of their transactions and investments, just like we do. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies, Mr. Beale. The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. The world is a business, Mr. Beale. It has been since man crawled out of the slime. And our children will live, Mr. Beale, to see that perfect world in which there's no war or famine, oppression or brutality. One vast and ecumenical holding company for whom all men will work to serve a common profit, in which all men will hold a share of stock, all necessities provided, all anxieties tranquilized, all boredom amused. And I have chosen you, Mr. Beale, to preach this evangel.
Why me?
Because you're on television, dummy. 60 million people watch you every night of the week, Monday through Friday.
Are we at one of those moments in history in which there is the necessity for a new world order? A, because of what's taken place in the Middle East, the rise of different kinds of groups, and B, what's happened in Asia, meaning that there has been a shift from the West to the East.
There's a need for a new world order, but it has different characteristics in different parts of the world.
Between 1095 and 1291 AD, the Pope launched 7 bloodbaths called the Christian Crusades, torturing, burning, beheading, and mass murdering hundreds of thousands of Muslims and Jews in the name of God. The Pope's brutal soldiers were called Knights Templar, or Knights of the Temple of Solomon, and evolved into today's secretive brotherhood called the Freemasons. Between 1450 and 1700 AD,
George Ruddy died today. Edward George Ruddy was the chairman of the board of the Union Broadcasting Systems, and he died at 11 o'clock this morning of a heart condition, and woe is us. We're in a lot of trouble. So, a rich little man with white hair died. What has that got to do with the price of rice, right? And why is that woe to us? Because you people and 62 million other Americans are listening to me right now. Because less than 3% of you people read books. Because less than 15% of you read newspapers. Because the only truth you know is what you get over this tube. Right now, there is an entire generation that never knew anything that didn't come out of this tube. This tube is the gospel. The ultimate revelation. This tube can make or break presidents, popes, prime ministers. This tube is the most awesome goddamn force in the whole godless world. And woe is us if it ever falls into the hands of the wrong people. And that's why woe is us that Edward George Ruddy died. Because this company is now in the hands of CCA, the Communication Corporation of America. There's a new chairman of the board, a man called Frank Hackett, sitting in Mr. Ruddy's office on the 20th floor. And when the 12th largest company in the world controls the most awesome goddamn propaganda force in the whole godless world, who knows what shit will be peddled for truth on this network? So you listen to me. Listen to me. Television is not the truth. Television is a goddamn amusement park. Television is a circus, a carnival, a traveling troupe of acrobats, storytellers, dancers, singers, jugglers, sideshow freaks, lion tamers, and football players. We're in the boredom-killing business. So if you want the truth, go to God. Go to your gurus. Go to yourselves. Because that's the only place you're ever going to find any real truth. But man, you're never going to get any truth from us. We We'll tell you anything you want to hear. We lie like hell. We'll tell you that Kojak always gets the killer and that nobody ever gets cancer in Archie Bunker's house. And no matter how much trouble the hero is in, don't worry, just look at your watch. At the end of the hour, he's going to win. We'll tell you any shit you want to hear. We deal in illusions, man. None of it is true. But you people sit there day after day, night after night, all ages, colors, creeds. We're all you know. You're beginning to believe the illusions we're spinning here. You're beginning to think that the tube is reality and that your own lives are unreal. You do whatever the tube tells you. You dress like the tube. You eat like the tube. You raise your children like the tube. You even think like the tube. This is mass madness, you maniacs. In God's name, you people are the real thing. We are the illusion. So turn off your television sets. Turn them off now. Turn them off right now. Turn them off and leave them off. Turn them off right in the middle of the sentence I'm speaking to you now. Turn them off.
The CIA, the Federal Reserve, the Department of Homeland Security, Medicare. I know that you used to want to end the FBI. I'm not sure whether you still support that idea, sir. Perhaps you can tell us. But if you get rid of the CIA, let alone the FBI, how would President Paul have any idea, any intelligence of what our enemies, foreign and domestic, are up to?
Well, you might ask a better question. Before 9/11, we were spending $40 billion a year, and the FBI was producing numerous information about people being trained on airplanes to fly them but not land them, and they totally ignored them. So it's the inefficiency of the bureaucracy that is the problem. So increasing this with the Department of Homeland Security and spending more money doesn't solve the problem. Yes, we have every right in the world to know something about intelligence gathering, but we have to have intelligent people interpreting this information. But you know, just going for increasing presidential powers, as been discussed, is rather disturbing to me. This whole idea that we're supposed to sacrifice liberty for security, we were advised against that. Don't we remember that when you sacrifice liberty for security, you lose both? That's what's happening in this country today. We have a national ID card on our doorsteps. It's being implemented right now. We have FISA courts. We have warrantless searches. We've lost habeas corpus. We've had secret prisons around the world, and we have torture going on. That's un-American, and we need to use the power of the presidency to get it back in order to take care of us and protect this country and our liberties.
Thank you, Congressman.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. punks are running wild in the street, and there's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know the air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value. So, I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. I want you to get up right now. Get up, go to your windows, open them, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. Things have got to change.
How many stations does this go out?
You've got to get mad.
67.
I know it goes to Louisville and Atlanta. I'm not going to take this anymore. Then we'll figure out what to do about the depression and the inflation and the oil crisis. But first, get up out of your chairs, open the window, stick your head out and yell, and say, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
Who are you talking to, Herb?
CGT, Atlanta.
Are they yelling in Atlanta, Herb?
Are they yelling in Atlanta, Ted? But first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
They're yelling in Baton Rouge.
Get up out of your chair.
Son of a bitch! We struck the mother lode!
Stick your head out of the window, open it, and stick your head out and keep yelling and yell, I'm as mad as hell. I'm not going to take this anymore. Just get up from your chairs right now. Go to
Where
the
you
window.
going? I want to see if anybody's yelling.
Britain has undergone a huge change in the last few years. Since 9/11, the state has developed a very different view of its citizens. New surveillance technologies are penetrating every aspect of our lives, and we don't even know it. Across the country, millions of cameras are watching us. The police will soon be able to record every journey we make.
Your vehicle has insurance. Is that address? Yes, yes.
And soon the state will want all our fingerprints and iris scans.
Please look into the mirror.
The Information Commissioner recently released a report on the surveillance society of today. But there is much more to come in the future.
Basically, it's a first and only microchip to implant in humans.
Just like my barcode.
Exactly.
The government says we need all this new technology to fight 21st century crime and terrorism. But far from making life safer, it could actually help those we fear most.
Here's a new passport. That's the actual chip that will have your data stored on it.
Yeah.
Full name, date of birth,
yes,
nationality, and so on. I've written some software that will actually try and read it.
It's unbelievable.
The state now has powers to probe and pry into our lives that the dictatorships of the past couldn't have dreamt of. A profound change is taking place, and we should all be worried that we are sleepwalking into a society where 24-hour surveillance of everyone is the norm. I recently accepted an offer to engage in an email correspondence about surveillance and civil liberties with Tony Blair, which was published in the Observer newspaper. The Prime Minister dismissed concerns about civil liberties, arguing the increased dangers posed by crime and terrorism justified the government's approach. He wrote, We are trying to fight 21st century crime by 19th century means. It hasn't worked. It won't work. The terrorism is different. The street crime is different. In this program, I want to find out more about the actual technology of surveillance. What is already in use, how it is being used, and what is planned for the future. And most importantly, what the consequences are for us, the citizens of this democracy. And this is where it starts.
This is one of 4 million CCTV cameras in Britain. That's more than anywhere else in Europe. In the last 15 years, Britain has become the CCTV capital of the world.
There's no doubt that cameras can deal with some crime effectively. For instance, they significantly reduce crime in car parks, which is one of the reasons the current government spent £170 million on CCTV when it came to power. Today, they are everywhere. On the street, in shops, in restaurants and bars, even on buses and taxis. And the footage is normally held for 30 days.
I just did a little experiment. I walked from this concourse down through the station, down to the gents' loo, and counted 31 cameras.
Professor Clive Norris estimates that people in London are filmed an average of 300 times a day.
What we've moved away from is this idea, in a sense, that you should only target those that you have reasonable suspicion of, and we've moved to a point where we're saying everybody is suspicious and we have a right to target everybody.
It's a fundamental change in our society when everyone becomes a suspect, doesn't it?
I think this is the major drift in the last 15 years. When we talk about the move to the risk society, what it actually means is we are all a risk, therefore we must all be monitored.
Not just monitored, but judged. London Underground has recently been testing out some remarkable new software created by a British company called Ipsotech, which will analyze CCTV footage. Using a pre-programmed profile, the software will decide if what the camera is seeing is normal or abnormal. The makers claim it will identify potential criminals by their behavior. For example, if someone is standing near a cash machine but not using it, the software will alert the CCTV operator. Perhaps it's time for us to start practicing our normal behavior. In response to the increase in surveillance, the government has introduced laws intended to give us greater access to our personal data, including CCTV footage. Heather Brooke is a journalist specializing in data protection law and the Freedom of Information Act. She believes that in practice, these laws are failing to deliver what they promise.
It's a one-way system where they're demanding all this information from us, and yet on the other hand, they're not giving it back.
But what would, I mean, you know, I would say this to people, and I've often written this sort of thing, and people tend to say, but what can I do? This is the way life is, this is the way technology is, and there's nothing I can do, I can't protest. What can they do?
I guess the simplest thing they could do is use their right to ask for the footage.
Yeah.
And
how do they do that, actually?
What they do is they make a request, it's called a subject access request,
yes.
And you use the Data Protection Act,
yes.
And you ask the authority who owns the camera for the footage of you.
Yes. We decided to put these Freedom of Information laws to the test. There are hundreds of cameras around the Houses of Parliament and Ministry of Defence. Well, it's one of the most important and sensitive areas in Britain, so the high security is to be expected.
Was it actually for?
This is Channel 4.
Channel 4, was it a documentary or?
Yes,
okay.
yeah.
That's all I wanted to know, thank you.
All right, thank you. Then I stood outside a bank for a few minutes being watched. I can understand the reasons for them needing security as well. Just around the corner is a football association. Even they have cameras that film anyone who passes. It's difficult to imagine why they feel they need cameras anywhere but on the pitch. And what's happening to all this material? How long is it stored? How can it be used? Heather prepared letters filed under the Data Protection Act, requesting access to some of the footage. I'll soon find out whether the promise of the Data Protection Act is fulfilled in practice or not. In the last few years, software has been available to allow computers to read car number plates. This automatic number plate recognition technology is used in speed cameras and on a huge scale to enforce a congestion charge in London.
Go ahead. Bravo Uniform 04 Tango Zulu Golf. Your vehicle has insurance. That's address? Yes, yes.
Now it's been developed further and has been linked to the vast police national computer database. Here in South London, it's been used to track every vehicle that passes, up to 60 cars a minute. The number plates are instantaneously checked against the national computer for theft, insurance irregularities, unpaid fines, or suspected criminal activity. Patrols a few hundred meters away are waiting to pick up the suspects. 23 police forces across England and Wales are now using this technology in high crime areas.
What's a big impact for you? In that time, essentially for us, it's about denying criminals the use of the roads and increasing road safety. And so the kind of vehicles that we capture will be involved in crime, general crime. So we have caught people who are wanted for murder, people who are involved in serious crime, people who have got weapons and firearms within their vehicle.
But the police have far greater plans for this technology.
One of the troubling things about this new surveillance society of ours is something known as function creep. A piece of technology is brought in for one reason, but then used for far more.
London's congestion charge system has 700 cameras, which use number plate recognition. It is designed to charge people who drive into the centre of town during peak times. But, in an example of function creep, the police want to link these existing cameras with the police national computer. And it isn't just London. A reported 3,000 cameras are currently being installed in a nationwide rollout of number plate recognition systems. And they won't just be monitoring criminals. The system will log the time, date and location of every car which passes its cameras. A national computer centre will scan up to 35 million number plates every day and keep the information for 2 years. And the police want to extend that to 5.
One of the really astonishing things is that despite the serious implications for privacy and individual liberty, these measures were never debated in Parliament.
We were waiting for a response to our request for CCTV footage. But I also want to know more about the cameras used in London for the congestion charge.
I've got 2 more requests that should be coming through at the end of this week. The one about the congestion charge cameras.
I'm very interested in that.
Yeah, when
now, these are the cameras which, when the congestion charge is not in operation, they're still filming and collecting your number plate. Why are they doing that?
I have no idea. I've asked them for the hours of operation, and then I've asked if these are operating out of the congestion charge time period, why? What's the policy on why they're running? And what's done with that data as well?
Yeah.
What's the purpose of collecting that data?
So we're checked on the roads and watched on the streets. What about the tube? Transport for London has been very active in promoting Oyster cards. And why not? They're convenient, easy to use, and if you have one, you get a 50% discount.
Or is it the case that you get penalised if you don't have one? You may not know this, but having an Oyster card gives London Transport a complete record of every single journey you make.
Every trip you've taken in the last 8 weeks has been recorded in a database. The time, the start and finish points, all linked directly to your name and address. So now, there can be a record of your movements as you walk, drive, and travel on the tube. Whatever next.
Please look into the mirror. Please move back a little.
From 2009, we will need to have our biometric data recorded if we want one of the Prime Minister's ID cards. He says they will be key in fighting everything from terrorism to illegal immigration.
Please look into the mirror. Please look into the mirror.
The government is planning to spend at least £5.4 billion on the most comprehensive database of personal information ever created by a government, the National Identity Register. To get a card, you will need to submit 49 pieces of personal information, including biometric data like fingerprints, 3D facial recognition, and even iris scans. The cards are voluntary at the moment, but eventually you're going to need a new passport, and that's when the system becomes coercive. To get one, you will have to provide the same 49 pieces of personal data for the National Register, or you're going nowhere. I think it won't be long before shops, bars and offices think they're the best way to establish proof of identity. I don't mind identifying myself with a passport or a driving license or a simple plastic identifier like this. What I do mind is giving 49 pieces of information about myself to the National Identity Register. And this database isn't passive. Every time your card is swiped on the terminal linked to the NIR, it will register the details of where it was used. In effect, the database will start tracking your life. And might a future government, under pressure to do something about terrorism, crime or antisocial behaviour, start marking the cards of people they suspect, a kind of electronic black mark? But the government is not stopping with every adult in the United Kingdom. At a cost of over £200 million, it intends to create a database containing the personal details of Britain's 11 million children. Up to 400,000 public sector workers will be able to access personal information about your child. The government claims it will keep our children safe and secure. How is it, then, that top politicians and celebrities will be allowed to keep their children's names off the database? For security reasons. We have a legal right to see our own personal data, but how easy is it to actually do this in practice? Heather has received some early results, and interestingly, the House of Commons had sent us the tapes. So that's a pretty impressive response.
I've never really known anybody to get their own footage. Now, maybe that's because there's going to be a camera crew setting up and they can see that, but nevertheless, yeah, they did deliver the goods on that one.
Yes. But we also tried the Ministry of Defence and the Football Association. Both of these did not provide us with any footage.
So the other big thing that came through was about Oyster cards.
Yes.
What I thought was most interesting about this, again, is how the police are starting to use the Oyster card database as their new toy. So from August 2004 to March 2006, there was 426 requests by the police to search the database. So that's almost a year and a half, 426 requests. In the last 6 months, the police are making 170 requests per month to access the database.
After this meeting, we received a reply from Transport for London about congestion charge cameras. It said the cameras are not turned off at the weekend because it would be too expensive for someone to go around each camera and flick a switch. So even when the congestion charge is not in force, the cameras are still monitoring traffic. So what is the reason for the surveillance systems that I have seen spreading across Britain? Tony Blair argues that the events of 9/11 have changed the rules of the game forever. That the war on terror is unlike anything leaders of the past have had to deal with, and that new measures are required to fight a new enemy. This justification has been especially effective in the United States. "5 years on from 9/11, I decided to return to America to look at what surveillance technologies are being used there and which ones are coming to the UK. The amazing thing about the American response to the 9/11 was the astonishing staunchness of the New Yorkers particularly, which is where I was. Everyone seeming to know what to do without being told. And then, of course, much later on, and to my mind it was 10 days, 2 weeks, the shock of what had happened, the shock of this first attack on American soil since Pearl Harbor, began to sink in. And I think from that moment on, you see the America that we see today. It was decided then to assert American authority, to make sure that the 21st century was going to belong to America. In the months after 9/11, when the world was still in shock, significant pieces of anti-terror legislation were passed quickly. They included the Patriot Act, which has dramatically increased the state's powers of mass surveillance. And as President Bush's admission of a controversial phone tapping program showed, his administration has been making legally questionable use of these new powers.
I authorize the National Security Agency to intercept the international communications of people with known links to Al-Qaeda and related terrorist organizations.
But by May 2006, it emerged that not only was the American government listening to international calls, it was also monitoring the domestic phone records of millions of innocent Americans. One of the astonishing parts of this case is the sheer numbers involved. Since 9/11, the National Security Agency has been analyzing without consent the telephone calls of nearly 300 million Americans. That's estimated to be 1.9 trillion calls. This type of mass surveillance is no longer the stuff of science fiction. The NSA phone tapping case is an example of data mining, a new technique that means the records of your internet searches, your bank transactions, credit card purchases and phone calls can all be searched in seconds for certain patterns of behavior, such as regularly calling the Middle East. The hope is that these patterns will help to identify potential terrorists. But Jay Stanley at the American Civil Liberties Union believes that the technique of data mining is a serious threat to our privacy.
We're living in a world where more and more information and data is created about us, where we pass through sensors or cameras and computers, and we buy things and we enter places and use electronic key cards. And each of those pieces of information might be harmless on its own, that you were at this place at this time. But when you bring each of those pieces of information together, they're like pixels. Yeah. You could form a very high-resolution image of somebody's life to a degree that really is quite spooky. And I think that most people, if they knew the extent of the possibilities in this area, would be quite alarmed.
And it's very difficult to persuade people of the deep and lasting change it's going to bring to their lives. And that's what you do. And how do you do it?
People say, I've never done anything wrong. And my answer to that is, are you sure? There are a lot of laws on the books, a lot of complicated laws in the books, a lot of laws where the prosecutors and the police have a lot of discretion to interpret the laws, and if they decide that you are their enemy, you're public enemy number one, and they have the ability to go through your life with a fine-tooth comb because your privacy has been destroyed, they will find something. Chances are pretty good.
This is the reality of living in the digital age. Almost everything we do leaves an electronic trail. But just in case you think this cannot happen in the United Kingdom, think again. It's recently been revealed the CIA has accessed European bank accounts. SWIFT is the international money transfer system used by 7,500 banks and financial institutions in 200 countries. It processes $6 trillion a day. In June 2006, the New York Times revealed that the CIA had subpoenaed SWIFT for access to their vast number of financial transactions. The paper claimed that the program led to the capture of the mastermind of the 2002 Bali bombing and helped identify a man laundering money for Al-Qaeda. But it also emerged that possibly as many as 20 million British banking transactions were included in the information made available to the US government. However, there's a question that nobody seems to be asking. Does the success rate of these mass surveillance programs justify their existence? Or has the public fear of terrorism been used for political gain? Since 9/11, the Bush administration has brought in blanket surveillance programs. But is this really the best way to deal with the modern threat of terrorism? Al Gore, once vice president and recently recast as the conscience of liberal America, is now warning of the dangers of this new obsession with surveillance.
The Bush-Cheney administration chose to use the war against terror as a basis for both political argument in a partisan context and for an assault on the individual rights, including the right to privacy, including the right to be free of government eavesdropping. These rights have been weakened now. The use of fear to acquire power has a rather old provenance.
Yes.
Politicians from time immemorial have used that tactic. It's always been effective.
I wonder if you think this blanket surveillance is a good way of tracking.
No, it's not. It's not effective in its own terms. I talked to an FBI expert who put it this way. He said, "We're looking for needles in haystacks." Yes. And the Bush-Cheney administration keeps piling more hay on top of the stacks. And the routine mass collection of all of these conversations and communications is not only an invasion of privacy, it's also completely impractical as a way of finding threats to security that are legitimate. They had the names of the hijackers on 9/11. They had their telephone numbers. They were listed in the book under their own names. Two of them were, and yet they had so much hay to sort through. Yes. They ignored those pointed facts and said, "Oh, we need to collect more mass data." It's not the right way to do it.
If I just can ask then, if you feel that in today's climate and with these great terrorist threats, we should change our views of civil liberties.
Well, I don't think so. To use that hypothetical as an excuse for the routine destruction of civil liberties, I think is a serious abuse of democratic traditions.
In Britain, we have now got the legislation to build an ID card. Do you feel that Americans would accept this? What is a very big step for a population to accept?
In the U.S. context, yes, a national ID card has always been resisted precisely because it has been seen as a very powerful tool which, in the hands of the wrong kind of government, could be a means for abusing all privacy.
Social control, really?
Yes, that's right.
And as we enter an age where total surveillance is now a technical possibility, I think we need to ask if governments should be given these powers. Many of these programs are secret, so it's hard to challenge them. I believe it leaves them open to abuse. And I can already see it happening at America's airports. After 9/11, flying to and in America has become a civil liberties disaster area. In response to the attacks, the US government has compiled so-called no-fly lists, which are supposed to be made up of people with known terrorist associations. There are over 100,000 names on them, and if your name matches, you will either be prevented from flying or made to go through extra security. The US government claims to be using these powers to make it hard for terrorists to operate. But there's growing evidence that it's also making it hard for anyone who dares to question its policies. Jan Adams and Rebecca Gordon are die-hard anti-war activists. They publish an anti-war paper, War Times. They believe that this was enough to put them on a no-fly list. These two middle-aged American women seem to be regarded as a threat to national security.
We went to the airport with a little bit of extra time, as one always does, and got up to the counter, handed in our identification. The woman behind the counter tapped in our names. She got a funny look on her face and she said, "There's something wrong with my computer. I have to call my boss." And she went and made a phone call.
We stood out in the middle of the airport and she came over and said, "I have to stay with you because I've called the police. You're on the FBI no-fly list."
And she said, "I can't imagine why this would be happening to you." And we looked at each other and we thought about the 1,000 copies of War Times that we had in our suitcases. And we said,
maybe.
We said, well, it might have to do with the fact that we publish an anti-war newspaper. And she said, oh, and her eyes got really big. So then the police came. 3 uniformed, armed members of the San Francisco police. And they stood around, basically surrounded us and our luggage in the middle of the airport and radioed in our names to headquarters. And they said, "We have to see if you're on the master list." Master list? Okay. Well, about 20 minutes later.
It took about 20 minutes, and they came back, "You're not on the master list. So we're going to have to search you," and they marked up our boarding pass.
With a big red S.
With a big red S, and we had special search for the luggage, and it got run through the bomb stuff.
At the time, the list was secret, but it was recently leaked to the media and contained a number of very bizarre names. Even Senator Edward Kennedy has found himself being stopped at airports. As political activists, Jan and Rebecca, along with the American Civil Liberties Union, took the government to court.
You know, in the end what happened was the judge did award court costs to the American Civil Liberties Union. And
so you had a victory of sorts.
We had a victory.
We had a victory of some nature.
Yeah, yes. I mean, they didn't make the ACLU bear the cost of the case.
Was there any apology made to you?
Oh,
no.
No, I don't think that this administration is sorry.
They don't apologize.
They don't apologize for anything. They're certainly not going to apologize to us.
But despite the fightbacks of the civil liberties movement, it is an unequal contest. They are up against the full force of a determined and well-resourced government. Data mining and no-fly lists are already part of life in America. But what about tomorrow? What surveillance technologies await us in the future? Supermarkets like this one in San Francisco are home to a new breed of 21st century tracking device. RFID, or radio frequency identification chips, are tiny transmitters that can be attached to almost any product and scanned at a distance. Essentially, they're 21st century barcodes. When triggered, they transmit a unique code which can be received up to 10 meters away. They are being used by stores like Walmart as a way to track products around the world. RFID allows the company to know when a product is in the warehouse and when it is bought by a customer and taken home. In theory, you can even track the object after you've bought it. But yet again, I can see these seemingly harmless technologies
that are supposed to make life more efficient becoming subject to the laws of function creep. An American company called Verichip has taken this same RFID technology and is implanting the chip in humans. Technology that was brought in to track your Gillette razor can now be used to track and identify humans, and that's about to include me. So just tell me about this microchip you're going to inject into my arm.
Yes, it's a first and only FDA-approved microchip to implant in humans.
Yes.
It uses RFID, radio frequency identification technology.
Yeah.
But the real purpose of this is it's a link to your personal and medical information on a secure website. So in a case of an emergency, if you were confused, comatose, or otherwise unable to communicate and presented to an emergency room, they would be able to scan you and pick up a unique 16-digit number, which is the only thing that's on this microchip,
yes,
and be able through that to access your medical record.
And what's the red bit?
The red is actually the antenna.
Yeah. Huh?
And if you look right back here, there's a very small microchip, and that's actually has the 16-digit number. If you ever decided to have it removed, it can be removed. It's a simple procedure to remove it.
It's like my barcode.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you're ready,
I'm ready.
Just relax your
Does this
arm like
hurt?
this. It should not hurt at all. Okay, just relax.
Mm-hmm.
We are all done. I'm just going to now just double check and make sure it's working before I let you out of here. And you heard the beep.
Yes, I recognize the last
few
few digits.
Number.
Yes, well, I don't recognize the whole number, but the last 4 digits are right. Yes.
Right, and that's the same number that we have on here, which is the same number that we put in.
So that's me.
That's you now. Here actually corresponds to this number. Right. This number I'm
Verichip has huge ambitions for their product, which was originally designed to tag pets. The CEO of Verichip recently promoted the idea that all migrant workers be chipped, and it has also been suggested that the entire US military receive implants. Verichips have already been implanted in several patients with degenerative brain conditions such as Alzheimer's, so they can be identified in a medical emergency. But the Verichip is old technology. The new generation of RFID chips will do much more than just transmit a code. Many states in America are considering putting them in driving licenses. They will be able to transmit all your personal details when they come within range of an RFID reader. The scheme is aimed at making the license harder to forge and more convenient for the police. Li Tian works for the Electronic Frontier Foundation, an organization promoting personal privacy in the digital age.
These IDs are not just trackable in the sense that they have a unique ID number. They will broadcast your name, your date of birth, your country of nationality, et cetera, et cetera. And if you're a parent and you have children who are about to carry a driver's license, what do you want strangers to be able to know? I've got a daughter, she's 15. In a year, she's going to have a driver's license. Do I want her to be carrying a driver's license to broadcast her name, her dress, height, weight, eye color to anyone who's got a compatible reader? I don't think so. So one of the major issues that we've got is trying to keep personal information off of RFID cards and making sure that people really do understand, that there's a significant risk associated with that.
People's faith in this one tiny piece of technology, the RFID chip, is amazing. And it's not just being used here in America. The application of RFID is expanding rapidly, and it is already being used in the United Kingdom. All new British passports are already being issued with RFID chips. The forthcoming ID card will also contain similar technology. But are the technologies themselves secure? Back home, I'm due for an encounter with someone who is convinced he can prove they are anything but. We are constantly told
that modern surveillance technologies are for our own safety, that CCTV protects us from crime, and that the new RFID passports will help fight terrorism. Many of you may still think they're a good thing, but have politicians overestimated the security of the technologies themselves? It's something we were about to put to the test. While I have been filming this program, I know I have been watched. 2 hours outside London is an old nuclear bunker, now used as a highly secure facility where companies protect and store private data. It is here that I was about to find out just how secure the technologies that track us really are. The first thing I saw as I entered the bunker was a monitor playing CCTV footage of me walking down a street in London. And deeper inside the complex, loudspeakers started playing a recording of my voice. But the man who started the company based here has promised to explain everything. Adam Laurie is a security consultant who exposes weaknesses in high-tech systems. And while I have been investigating technology, it seems technology has been investigating me.
Okay, so you probably recognise the voices. That's you having a meeting with Heather Brooke.
He had somehow managed to make Heather's mobile bug one of our meetings.
So we were bugged. So basically, yeah, the phone not only bugged you, it was also a tracking device to find out where you were in the first place.
Without me knowing, Adam had signed Heather up with a perfectly legal company which offers to pinpoint the location of any phone registered with it. He then used a Bluetooth communication facility on her phone to listen to our meeting.
So I was able to bring up a map showing where that phone was, drive to the general area, scan the area for the Bluetooth. Once I found it, I then, I had a visual on you guys, so I saw you sitting there. I was in a cafe round the corner, yes. Initiated the connection, told the phone to ring me, and then recorded the conversation. Nice.
When a computer charge is not in operation.
These.
And how did you acquire these?
Adam had also accessed CCTV cameras that were filming me on the streets of Soho. They transmit on a wavelength that is surprisingly easy to intercept, and so allow the images to be captured.
You were going to be going to this meeting in Soho, so I scouted the area beforehand with a simple handheld scanner and was able to record images from cameras pointing out on the street and capture you on your way to the meeting. Now, I mean, that's relatively harmless, they're just street cameras, but the same technology is used inside buildings for security. And actually, they're making the place less secure because they're broadcasting it to the world. So.
I normally work at home and now have a wireless internet system. But apparently, this can make my personal emails and internet searches available to whoever wants to see them.
Okay, so what's this here you got here?
Okay, well, you should be able to recognise that. That's an email from you. Basically, I came to your house, sat outside, scanned the street for Wi-Fi networks, found your network, and then intercepted you sending that mail.
Right. So anyone could do that?
Anyone could have done it, absolutely.
So you can use my phone to record conversations and track me. Yep. Use other people's cameras to take pictures of me.
Yep.
Snitch my email by sitting outside in the van with a bit of equipment. Yep. What else can you do?
One other thing I heard that you've actually had a chip implanted in your arm.
I have.
See if I can read it. Do you know where it is?
Yes,
exactly?
I know it's here.
Okay. So that should be your ID number.
Yes, I remember the last 4 digits.
So that can be read with an off-the-shelf commercial scanner. Now I've done that and I know your number. I have some blank chips which I bought over the internet. So is that what your chip looks like?
That's exactly what it looks like.
Right, so there's no reason I can't now program that number into that chip.
Right. So
have that implanted in my arm, and then I'm you.
Then you're me.
Yeah.
Even the chip in my arm, promoted as a secure means of determining identity, could be cloned. But Adam's most staggering revelation concerned a piece of technology that almost each and every one of us will soon be carrying.
I know you've been looking at the new passports and ID cards and so on, and that's a concern for me as well. I mean, here's a new passport, and this has a chip in it.
That's a chip, is it?
That's the actual chip that will have your data stored on it.
Yeah.
And my concern is, the privacy of that data. So I was curious what was actually stored on there. So I've written some software that will actually try and read it.
Can you do that?
So yeah, what I'm going to do now is read this one. This is my son's passport.
And after just a few seconds, all the personal details stored on the passport came up on the screen. Adam had cracked the new RFID passport, introduced for its supposed security. And this, remember, is the technology that will be used in the ID card.
Okay, so this is the data that's stored in the passport. So we've got his name, full name, date of birth, nationality, and so on.
So can anyone pick up this passport and read it from a scanner, or do they need something else?
It's slightly more complex than that. You actually need a key. You need a cryptographic key to be able to read it, but the key is derived from information that's fairly easy to get hold of. So it's basically passport number, date of birth, and expiry date of the passport.
And they're all jumbled up together, are they?
They're jumbled up in a particular way, which is a published algorithm. So, I downloaded from the internet exactly how I jumble them up. Once you have that information, you can log into the passport and you can read it.
It's unbelievable.
We asked the Home Office to respond to our findings. They said, the chip is one part of the security features used in the e-passport, but being able to copy this does not mean that the passport can be forged or imitated for illegal or unauthorized use. But the fact that we have been able to read secure data from the passport without opening it is still of enormous concern. These passports have only been out a few months, and my fear is that one day someone will be able to clone them. As it is, I don't feel they are keeping my personal information safe. And it's not just passports that have RFID. The new ID cards being introduced in 2009 will also have a similar chip.
If you have very much the same technology on this as you've got in your passport, any old fool, or anyone with a bit of know-how...
Well, once the tools are out there, anyone who gets their hands on the tools... I had to write my own because the software isn't generally available, but, once the things are in circulation, it's all public domain stuff.
The irony of all this is that criminals and terrorists, the very people these technologies are supposed to stop, will find and exploit weaknesses in the system. Terrorists won't be carrying their ID cards, they'll be carrying yours. Adam has shown me fatal flaws in some of the technologies being used in the surveillance age. But despite this, their use continues to grow.
So what should we do about it? I think there should be a national debate about the amount of surveillance in our society. I think we should take control of our futures rather than just letting it happen.
We are already at a stage where mass surveillance of populations is a reality, reducing each one of us to the status of suspect. But the issue is not just about privacy. As we have seen, the lack of security in these new systems puts us all at risk from the very people they seek to protect us from.
A terrifying picture is taking shape in my mind of the total surveillance society. Is this really what we want for ourselves?
Is there a plan for a new world order, a one world government, and how do we stop it?
Well, I think even our first President Bush said that the New World Order was in tune, and that's what they were working for. The UN is part of that government. They're working right now very significantly for a North American Union. That's why there's a lot of people in Washington that don't care too much about our borders. They have a philosophic belief that national sovereignty is not important. It's also the reason I have made very strong suggestion that we need not be in the United Nations for our national security.
What do you think about our borders and immigration policy?
Our borders have been totally neglected. We worry more about the borders between North and South Korea and between Iraq and Syria than we do about our own.
Absolutely.
Just recently, a bunch of our border guards were picked up and sent and enticed to go over to Iraq. It's insane. I mean, we should have more border guards, and the only way you can afford it and get the personnel is bring our troops home, worry about ourselves. We don't even have the money to finance this world empire that we operate under. We have to borrow almost $3 billion a day just to pay for the war and our extravagance. And we borrow it from none other than China and Japan. I mean, we don't even have enough wealth produced in this country to finance the amount of spending that we have. And it will come to an end, and I think most Americans realize it. Middle-class Americans and poor Americans have already suffered the consequences. Their standard of living has already started down. Those who are doing well know deep down in their heart they're doing it on borrowed money. And that is going to come to an end. It's also the reason I emphasize the importance of sound money. If you allow governments, anytime throughout all of history, to print money, they always print too much and they destroy the money.
Yeah.
Our dollar is worth 4 cents of what it was when the Federal Reserve was created.
I'm mad as hell! I'm not gonna take it anymore!